we went from we make pillows in our basement to we're building like a huge 40 by 80 shop. We're bringing in the wool mill, and then we're going to be able to work directly with sheep ranchers. Like, we can get better wool, we can get better relations with our producers, and it's big. It feels crazy.
It's incredible to think about the difference in your supply chain versus the supply chain of like a big pillow company. You can probably trace back the lineage of the sheep to the exact pillows that you're making.
Chase, what is happening, my brother? Welcome to the Meat Mafia podcast.
Hey, thanks guys for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, we're excited, man. We're number one, we're huge fans of everything that you're doing at the Woolshire. One of our favorite gifts that we've ever been given is our mutual friend Ryan Griggs. Shout out Ryan Griggs at the Regenaissance. He gifted Harry and I pillows for Christmas, which I think is such a cool concept of like finding high quality products that you care about and then gifting them to your friends. I think that's just a really cool transaction. But that's how we initially came across you and then started following you on Twitter. And we were saying how our show talks a lot about health, the food system, nutrition, but there's a lot that you've uncovered in the fabric industry. And you think about something as important as a pillow, something that you're literally laying your head down every single night. And most people have no idea about all these different toxins and ingredients and things that we're literally sitting on and sleeping on every single night. So we're so pumped that there are guys like you that are out there fighting the good fight and really trying to revolutionize the pillow and the fabric industry, man.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was like with everything, it's a rabbit hole to go down. You learn about what actually is in stuff, and like with food, you make steps and you go from, hyper processed food to whole foods, not the store, the just whole foods in general. And then you go, to like regeneratively raised, organic. And so with fabric, we try to just jump with our pillows. We just try to jump the whole gamut, like go from polyester pillows that are treated with formaldehyde, flame retardants, a ton of chemicals, like hundreds of chemicals. I don't even know all of them. To go from that to then going to, pure virgin wool that's grown in America and organic Texas cotton that's grown without pesticides, to create just a pure seamless jump, from the synthetic to the natural.
Mm. Chase, what got you started even thinking this way about improving the quality of fabrics that people are using every day in the form of a pillow?
Sierra was pregnant with our son, and we just started thinking like, well, I've always been kind of my mom raised me organic, in the organic food, mostly just like kind of granola food though.
Mhm.
Wasn't eating like a lot of grass-fed liver or anything. But I've always been somewhat conscious of food, but never fabric, never bedding or anything like that. And so I think it started with just learning about like polyester clothing, how it's not ideal, it's not optimal. It's full of just chemicals and releases microplastics and stuff like that. And when Sierra was pregnant with our son Frederick, we were like, yeah, he should have a mattress that's something clean that he can sleep on. So we started like looking, of course, on Amazon and just searching through Google, and we found we were pretty unsatisfied with the results. You just have to have a lot of trust in the system, and you have to trust that these Indian and Chinese manufacturers are doing the right thing and looking out for you and your family. And I just don't think that's the case. I think that's rarely the case. Um, and so we were like, let's build a mattress ourselves. Um, we found some people in Montana that have a wool carding mill, and they we went to them to buy the wool, and then they told us that they sell wool pillows, and they're some old timers, like they're in their 80s, and they're both hunchback and very cute, and they just taught us how to make wool pillows, and so we changed our bedding over to wool, and we made ourselves wool pillows, and we thought that's like, I never thought I'd get into business or do anything like that, but twofold, having a child kind of pushed me in that direction, to provide for my family, and then also I think it's just a great product that you know we can like show the whole process, and there's no hidden, there's no reason to have to cut corners, right? Because we're selling a premium pillow, and it's something that you should, feel good about laying down on every night. So yeah, we just started with pillows, and here we are.
Love that. That's a great story. And, I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast. I remember when we got those pillows as a gift. It's like you can just tell, but just by seeing it, holding it, touching it, like the difference in the quality of craftsmanship of what you guys are doing compared to these overseas companies that are producing these things at scale. And it's so interesting to really pull back the curtain around globalization in general, like what we've sacrificed in optimization for getting these goods for a good quality price. And it seems like, 50 to 100 years ago, there was this like hyper local tradesmanship of art, of high quality artisans that were making different quality goods like pillows, like denim, like meat, etc. And you would trade with like your local neighbor or someone that you trusted, and they would give you their hard-earned money in exchange for a really good quality product. And it's interesting how we've almost lost like the heart and soul of a lot of these industries and these goods and services. And I'm sure that's something that you've thought a lot about with everything that you're doing at the Woolshire. But when you were starting the brand, obviously you had started using wool. You really liked that fabric. Were there any non-negotiables that you had from a manufacturing perspective that you wanted to make sure, like from a principle standpoint, you adhered to with the Woolshire?
Yeah, yeah, and just a note on that, I think we in with Industrial Revolution, like, yeah, things start off like better, right? They start off like, oh, now we can make this for way cheaper. But then like the person that makes quality shoes, like he loses his job, but we can buy these shoes that are just somewhat not as good. But for like, a tenth the price. But then as that scales, it basically like the quality goes down tenfold, 100-fold, and then it just gets shipped out to like the cheapest global competitor. And it's not only like not an ethical system, it's just not a sustainable system, right? Like, because it creates like an entire world what we don't even see. We don't see their waste, we don't see them as people, how they're living their lives. um and it basically is just like for the cheapest price possible, and then it tricks us thinking that you can buy a pillow for $5 at Walmart, right? Like you think like, oh, a pillow's a pillow, but it's not like material wise, everything. So yeah, and then to answer your second question, yeah, so we started off, and we were just looking into at first we were just looking at getting the pillow manufactured. And so we contacted all these like organic bedding companies, and we're reaching out to them, and even in organic bedding, we just found that it's just not the standard that we want. Most of them use synthetic thread, and this sounds like so petty, but to us, it's extremely important. But like in the thread, the stitching, it can be certified organic and still have synthetic thread, which means microplastic, which means flame retardant and chemicals, and basically just a petroleum plastic, that you're still breathing in, even if it's minute. And then we just found like, yeah, when you scale things to like a big level, it's hard not to, I guess, conform to the bedding world, right? So there's just a lot of plastic components and stuff that we didn't want. And then it was also like really big order minimums, and we were just like, we're a really small company, so we just thought, okay, we'll start it ourselves. And we really wanted to source American fabric, which was, out of everything, it was the hardest thing to do. Um, Finding American woven fabric is really difficult, especially post-COVID. A lot of the mills have shut down. It's just really sad what's happened to this country. We used to be a huge cotton producer, and not only a producer of cotton, but also of weaving cotton and knitting cotton. And there's still a lot of knitwear, but as far as wovens, there's just not a lot. And so, yeah, we were luckily able to find. We got connected with some people in the industry, and we were able to find cotton for our cases, and that's grown in Texas, which is pretty cool.
Mm.
Yeah, the I think ability to actually create a product fully made in America is so admirable, and there's a few brands who are doing it so well, like Sisu Sauna. They are using American redwood and actually using Amish labor in Ohio to create this amazing sauna. I think of like Jocko's company Origin, which is using American labor, and I'm not exactly sure if I think he's using denim that's made in America, but it's just remarkable to me to see the shift where there are actually brands who are just willing to take the risk in some ways of just bringing things back on shore and creating American made products. But then you look back and you see the positive benefits of it, Americans getting employed and actually, in this industry where we've basically let it die off, manufacturing in the US. It used to be the backbone of the country. And so I'm just curious for you, when you think about scaling, I imagine obviously being US is something that's a non-negotiable for you guys, but that challenge of just continuing to build the brand with this high integrity, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I dream really big when it comes to that. Like I think about this all the time, and I've given some real thought as to how we can keep the Woolshire growing and support American business. Um, Either us or somebody would like to start like bring back more American manufacturing, um, and then scale it with the business. Like I think building another mill in Texas, close to where the cotton's grown, would be really cool. Obviously, that's a multi-million-dollar project down the road. We're not there. We're not even anything close to that. But either us or somebody else. It doesn't have to be us. But kind of like we want to vertically integrate and keep things American, and I think that's the way to do it. It's possible that the company we work with now could keep up with us quite a bit, but we'd like to get into other products as well, comforters and other wool bedding items.
Mm.
So we'll see. But yeah, I think it's crazy to dream like that big, but also I think if you don't have that, then it's limiting. So
Yeah, you need people like you in the industry that are willing to go after and attack difficult problems. And you're the perfect example of that. Like this business really started out of you wanting to provide, your children with something that's non-toxic, that's safe, that's super high quality. And you look at what you've already built in a short period of time. And it's exciting to think about what you guys are going to do 5 years from now. And I think we can bet that pillows are really just the start of everything that you're doing at the Woolshire. Was there anything in particular about wool compared to any other like organic clean ingredients that really attracted you to use that as the preferred sourcing for the pillow themselves?
yeah, I really like sheep. I've always
Yeah.
loved, been attracted to them. Just think they're really beautiful animals. And B, wool is very present in America. We have a lot of sheep here, and we just use Suffolk wool, which is pretty much America's breed of sheep. It's pretty much like the most popular sheep. A lot of people use them for 4-H shows, but but it's not like a fine wool. And people ask us like, oh, do you use merino wool? But merino wool is an extremely fine micron. So it's nice for like direct on skin. It's nice for like, yeah, some really nice active wear and stuff like that. But as far as a fill material, it would be really bad because it would just like compress and felt really easily. While Suffolk wool is extremely coarse, and it's kind of the stuff that your grandma used to make sweaters out of. So it's pretty fluffy, and it works great for wool pillows. And then thirdly, there's just wool is just like a super fiber. Like if you think about wool on a sheep, out in the elements, like wool doesn't grow mildew, even if a sheep is exposed to all this, hot and cold and rain and snow and sleet. It doesn't grow mildew. It's immune to dust mites, and it's also just naturally flame retardant. So you don't have to. In the bedding industry, it's kind of weird. Like they require you to like do flame tests on things. And so some companies will actually use wool as a natural flame retardant barrier so that they don't have to like spray. Like avocado mattress, I think uses wool as that flame retardant barrier, but otherwise you have to use synthetic flame retardant, which is just chemicals that like literally off gases for its entire life because it has to continue to be a flame retardant for however long a person owns a mattress. And so wool is just this super fiber. Like we thought about a lot of other ideas. We thought about like buckwheat hulls. We thought about like goose down, other natural things, and those things are fine. But buckwheat hulls can be susceptible to mildew, and it's also just susceptible to like the industrialization. Um, and same with the goose down. Like I don't know where to source goose down in America. Most all of that is in China and on like factory farms.
Hmm.
And so, but wool is like very present. It's easy to find and it's easy to scale. Like we could just keep making, wool products and they're just, I don't know, it's perfect fiber for bedding.
Hmm. What have been some of the most common pieces of feedback that you've gotten since you've started the Woolshire? Like, what sort of customer information have you collected where it's like, I imagine you have a very loyal niche following that is just super passionate about the product. So I'd love to understand like how they have experienced the product and what they kind of say about it.
Yeah, we got a lot of followers from Solbra. Shout out to Solbra, thank you, my friend.
Oh,
Yeah, a lot of kind of esoteric health type people, which Solbra is great for bringing people into a kind of normie lifestyle of eating bad into eating healthy and finding some good avenues for getting sun and being a healthy person. So soul bra type people has been great. And then like, yeah, we found ourselves kind of this sounds weird, but we found ourselves with a lot of like more conservative men as our customer base, which when I thought of building like an organic wool pillow, I thought it'd be like liberal women.
yeah.
And so it's just, yeah, the kind of opposite that I expected. Um, and not to harp on like liberals too much here, but I think sometimes, at least the kind of like woke crowd or whatever, I think a lot of that is show, and I don't think that with environmental concerns and stuff, I don't know how real that really is, how authentic that it really is. I think a lot of it is kind of a presentation, but with the health movement, with people like starting to work out and like put good energy into how they want to appear, how they want to be. I think that's probably primarily driven by like males and conservatives. So that's been something I did not expect at all.
Yeah, it's this incredibly interesting shift that's happened where I feel like all the old school, like independent health food stores, they were all by like Southern California lefties that were a very different type of liberal than what's currently in the marketplace. And now the pendulum has swung in the opposite direction where there's like, Christian, conservative, meat loving people that support their local artists. And it's so interesting that pendulum swift, that shift.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and we live in this town well, outside of this town called Sandpoint, Idaho, and it's filled with a bunch of draft dodgers from like the 70s.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because I like the people here. It's a nice like mix of like old school liberal and just like your standard kind of country loving conservative.
Yeah.
But that's a really nice mix because with old school liberals, I'm not talking about like new wave liberalism or anything, but like old school liberals did actually care about, like you said, like local foods. They cared about farmers markets. They cared about not spraying pesticides on the beach. They're the kind of people that actually care about the real environmental concerns, and those are the kind of people I really respect. So here we have like a great mix of the two, which you think North Idaho would just be a bunch of like hardcore conservatives, but we've got both.
Nice.
Oh, go ahead, Brett.
Oh, I was just gonna say if Chase, have you gotten to meet like the pack of sheep that are actually supplying the wool?
We haven't met them like shook hands or anything, but we have seen them. The mill that processes our wool for us right now, it's just east of Missoula, Montana, like an hour, and Ed and Sue are their names, and they process like all the local Suffolk wool, and then they also get wool from like the Missoula market and the Dillon market. Mostly, it's just all Montana wool that we're using, with a little bit of wool that's grown in Oregon as well. But when is this episode going to be aired?
Probably 3 weeks.
Okay, so I'll say an announcement, which is pretty cool. We're actually buying the wool mill um, from the Montana folks, and yeah, we bought some property, and some big news is happening. We were gonna leak it on social media, in a couple days, so figured it'd probably be safe to say it here. It's gonna be pretty big, so we're buying like this huge scouring station, which is basically just like hot water and organic soap to clean the wool. And then all this like 1960s drum carder machines that take raw wool after you've washed it. It makes it carded into bats. And yeah, our people are retiring, and the timing just kind of worked out perfectly. And so we're making like a big step. And yeah, we're pretty excited.
How does it feel to be able to make that type of move after having launched the brand and gone through those initial stages of taking a product from 0 to 1 and then being able to buy a mill and start to vertically integrate that into your business? Like, I imagine seeing the infrastructure come into place makes that big vision that, hey, maybe we can, continue to build out this thing really vertically and in the US and along the whole line of the mission. Like, it's actually possible. I imagine that this is a huge milestone for you guys.
It is, yeah. It's like pretty, I don't know, it's a big move. Like we make pillows in our basement to like we just bought some property on the highway, 3.5 acres, and we're building like a huge 40 by 80 shop. We're bringing in the wool mill, and then we're going to be able to work like directly with sheep ranchers, and kind of like refine it even more. Like we can get better wool. We can get better relations with the producers, and it's big. It feels crazy. Like it feels great. Feels like I'm a little nervous about the whole thing also, but I don't see it failing or anything. It's just kind of the process of getting there is it's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. It's like that incredible investment that you've made to have that autonomy that's going to allow you to be able to do everything that you want to do to really revolutionize this space. I just think it's incredible to think about the difference in your supply chain versus the supply chain of like a big pillow company that you would buy at Target or something like that, where, like you just said, you literally just bought the wool mill, you own the property, you know the exact sheep ranchers, you can probably trace back the lineage of the sheep to the exact pillows that you're making. Like, that transparency in your supply chain versus like this mysterious overseas supply chain that we almost want to pretend like it doesn't exist. It almost reminds me of like buying meat from a local rancher, where the rancher can tell you the exact lineage and the cattle and the name of where your meat is coming from, versus something you're buying at the grocery store where you almost just pretend like you don't even want to know where the supply chain is coming from. You almost want to pretend like it doesn't even exist, or you're just naive to it. It's fascinating to think that the term is pillow, but the sourcing and the origins like just couldn't be any more different.
Right. Yeah, that's a great example. It's there's a lot of parallels with food and with clothing. We've just changed, like in the past, it's really only been the past, I don't know, 100 years, not even 80 years, that we've changed into this like fast fashion culture, which isn't just clothing, it's bedding, it's everything. And we buy stuff and we just cycle through it. And yeah, because it's cheap, but who knows where, 90% of that stuff comes from. And we feel really privileged that we can know where everything's from, and we're just purists, and so we want to like create the best. Like we want people to sleep easy knowing like, okay, I know exactly what I'm breathing in. Like I know exactly where this is from. Um, I think as far as sleep goes anyway, I think that's probably, one of the biggest like biohacks you can make.
Yeah, it's incredible to think the steps that you're taking are actually reversing a lot of what's gone wrong with globalism, as Brett was saying. And the the thing too is like you guys are pioneering. I imagine that there's going to be a lot more people and dollars that follow once you guys, I mean, you guys have truly proven out that there's a market for this type of thing, which I think these big companies are generally kind of afraid of. But I see this world where, you know, Twitter is just such an interesting ecosystem in general, but a lot of these brands on Twitter that are being launched are truly high integrity. They have something unique about them from a sourcing supply chain standpoint, and a lot of them are trying to make American made products, at least on our corner of the internet. So, you know, I'm curious if you're bullish, obviously with the Woolshire you are, but do you see other brands kind of picking this up and really running with it? Because you do, you know, Brett and I talk about this a lot. Like, it's actually good to have some of this competition, this healthy competition, to draw more of a customer base into this whole movement, that it really is coming from a purist standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, no, from what I've seen in the last 2, 3 years on Twitter primarily, people are getting really aware of everything, like everything they use. Soap, fabric, bedding, food. People are just like waking up. And I think our parents, they kind of just, for the most part, just kind of like bought into the system. And it's not, everything was just marketed to them like as a pillow or as beef or whatever. But I think, there's been a revolution with food that's happened over the last 10, 15 years. I think the same thing's going to happen with fabric. And I think the same thing is going to happen with, care products like Van Man and all of that. Like I think we're just at the beginning stages. And I think there's like, yeah, there's a ton of room for growth. Like I think there can be like a million companies doing all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that Harry and I talk a lot about, Chase, is that classic image that's gone really viral of like the big food web of the 10 companies that monopolize like 90% of the processed foods in the inner aisle of the grocery store. And then the antidote to that are these base brands on Twitter like the Woolshire that are leaning into craftsmanship and sourcing your ingredients incredibly well and connecting with like-minded customers. And that's really the antidote to this like globalized processed food system that's just kind of ravaged our metabolic health and all these other industries over the last 50 plus years. And it's incredible, to Harry's point, the tool that Twitter is. I feel like Twitter is like the epicenter of these base brands. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, the impact that Twitter has played into the health of your own business and the awareness around the Woolshire.
Yeah, I don't think we'd be here if it wasn't for Twitter. And that sounds crazy. Like anytime people ask us like where do we find our customers or whatever, I'm almost like Twitter, I guess. And it's funny because no one ever thinks, that Twitter was kind of a place to even market. Um, and so yeah, and I started off with like no real following. I really wasn't even on Twitter that much. Mostly just being a troll. And so, but yeah, we have good friends on there, with good like a good following, and like Solbra, like Raw Egg Nationalists, like these guys have really like brought a lot of attention to us. And we did have to like bootstrap like and we don't have like a million, followers or anything. We don't have only have like 5,000, but like we had zero like a year and a half ago, so we were on our way. And it's something to like convince somebody to spend $180 on a pillow. Like that's a hard thing to do. And there has to be like a lot of education take place. But I think Twitter is the perfect kind of ecosystem for that, where thought, at least I think, free thinking is encouraged, and you can kind of share ideas.
What what do you think about in terms of, the next steps in terms of distribution for you guys? Like obviously Twitter has been a sweet spot, but are there any other places where you're looking at for growth with the business?
Um, yeah, I mean, we're trying to build up like our Instagram. We're trying to we don't, I think we have a Facebook, but we haven't even tried to mess with that. But Yeah, definitely down the road, we like to do like some Google ads and um, pretty much like when you search for wool pillow right now, it's a few companies that really like dominate the space, and we're making our way up. And it's kind of cool. Like we're like, I mean, I'm happy that those companies exist. Like even though they're our competition, like there's so much room for um, competition. But companies that have been around for like 40 years, like we're ranking better than them, which is pretty cool. And then, but yeah, there's just a few companies that kind of dominate the whole space, and I think we provide a lot more than them. I think we're way more transparent than them. We're not like shipping stuff off to Eastern Europe to do things. And yeah, I mean, we'd like to. I'm not really a professional business person or anything, so I'm just learning as we go. But definitely getting a lot of tips from Orzi, Chris Orzi on
Shout
Twitter.
out to
Shout out to Orzi.
I do feel like being able to tap into Twitter in such a meaningful way can really be a cheat code, like not trying to do everything, but really just picking one or two things that work really well. And Twitter is just such a great space where, if you just focus on that, you can really nurture an incredibly captivated audience. And I imagine too, with your product, you guys probably get tons of customers just referring people, like how we came across you guys through Ryan. It's just word of mouth. Like you guys are just doing things the right way and it gets people excited.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people like to talk about sleep, right up there with the weather. And so I think a pillow is a really nice product because you can talk, you can impress somebody that all the chemicals that are in their pillow, and you can tell them that you've got some, regenerative raised wool pillow handmade by a little family.
Yeah, I love that. And Instagram is it's very interesting to me how brands are like the natural tendency is to focus on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube first, which it makes sense because the sheer number of users. I think there's 4 times the amount of users on Instagram than there are on Twitter. But Instagram is kind of like this peacocking competition where I think the cool thing about Twitter is, like you mentioned, Chase, it's really the quality of your thoughts that allow your account to be shared and followed and retweeted by people. So I think as a passionate founder, I don't think there is a better tool than Twitter to launch a business, just because if you're constantly putting out free information and quality information, people are going to trust you over time. And then once they realize, oh, this guy has a, super high quality wool pillow, of course I'm going to buy from Chase because he's added so much value to my life and he really knows his shit. From an ingredient standpoint. So that's something that we've noticed. We kind of stumbled into Twitter organically 2 years ago, and it's been like the foundation of the businesses that we're currently running now. And I think it's a huge cheat code for founders, and it's very low stakes, and it'll take you some time to figure it out. But if I was a founder, that's one of the first things that I would do is create a Twitter account and just start adding value and don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
an awesome platform.
yeah.
Chase, was there anything about your background previously that you found to be incredibly helpful as you've launched the Woolshire?
I worked in construction for a lot of my life, like probably like 10 years off and on. And so I've got like a knack for building stuff. That's kind of also what opened my eyes to like the world of synthetic materials and like gross stuff. Because I kept getting sinus headaches from like, ripping down a sheet of plywood or whatever. There's just so much glues and formaldehyde and stuff in that wood product. So that's partly like what opened my eyes to like synthetic materials, but also like construction, being able to like see something and then envision it. The people that taught us how to make pillows, they did teach us how to make pillows, but we've changed it quite a bit to like our own style, like what we found works the best. And yeah, but besides that, yeah, I've kind of jumped all over the place with my life, with trying to find different things, and I never thought I'd be a business owner. I come from a long line of like entrepreneurs with businesses, but I never thought that was like my path. But having children has a way of kind of pushing you in a direction, and you're like, I need to build something for them, like so that they can inherit something, or at least have the option of inheriting something. And so we think the Woolshire can be a kind of heritage brand, like can be something like we don't want to just like make pillows and sell them and like fly by night kind of thing. Like we want to build something that's lasting, that will last the ages, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, your story is incredibly inspiring because it's such a common feeling to think, oh, if I'm going to launch a business, I need to do it when I'm single and when I'm really young, because once I get married and have kids, there's just this relationship between risk to reward that just changes. And I think your story is amazing because you actually kind of like debunk those misconceptions that like, no, not only can you do it, having a family will actually really push you in the right direction because you're thinking about legacy and this heritage brand and something that you can pass on for your kids. And I couldn't think of anything more admirable than being able to be a dad and provide for your family, but also give them this amazing business that you've built from scratch. So I'm sure that's something you've probably thought about, right? Because even when Harry and I started the Meat Mafia, our thought process was, all right, this is like the perfect time to launch it because we're single, we don't have kids, we don't have that much risk and that much overhead. But then you come across a guy like you where it's like, no, dude, you're never too late to get started and you can build something amazing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's some people are a little bit slower to launch, and I think it's smart to do things when you're single and you have the freedom. I think that's like, I if I were to do it again, I would of course choose that path. But yeah, I mean, it's when you're working construction and you're like out and you're just sweating your sweating a lot, then and you're thinking like, oh, my family's back home waiting for me, you know, and you're just like slaving away for somebody else to make a lot of money. You think like I can do something, like I can take my life into my own hands and do something for my family. And so yeah, sometimes I think it takes people having children, and for me for sure it did.
think a lot about the concept of sacrifice, and I feel like the stakes are certainly raised as we were alluding to with just having kids, but the idea of being able to take some of these probably more challenging early years and make those sacrifices now. I think a lot of people can pull on that and gain hope from it because there is a path forward. There is a path out of these jobs that maybe aren't fulfilling. That, if you are willing to take the risk or take some of these chances, you can build the future. Maybe it does come with some bumps and bruises along the way. I'm sure you can speak to that, but like the idea of having something in 10 years that your family can pull from and really create a lasting legacy with the brand itself, but also provide for your family, to me is like irreplaceable. I just think it's such a convicting pursuit, and what it teaches your kids too. Like I think about that often, like the character it takes to, go out and pursue something for yourself. Like your kids are going to be able to pull from that in itself. So I'm curious with these first few years, what have been some of the biggest learning moments for you as you've gotten this thing off the ground?
Yeah, I'm still struggling with it now, but definitely is just I don't want to say laziness, but just like pushing things off, you know. Yeah, social media is great, like it helps us a lot. It's also like really easy to get sucked in and be reading all this stuff. It's like at the end of the day, I don't know how much it helped me, you know. It kind of sucks because it's like with the business, like yeah, you can find some stuff that you can turn into bangers like just by scrolling, but also it's a double-edged sword. Like I hate being on social media. I just got a flip. I got a smartphone like 5 years ago, which sounds like a long time ago, but in the world of smartphones, like it's been I like outlasted a lot of people, and I just had a flip phone, and I've lived off grid without electricity, without running water. I've lived like very simply, very intentionally. And then to go into having to be on the computer a lot is it's a big time waster. I mean, it's also like really beneficial. Like I said, we wouldn't be here without it. Um, but time management is something I'm still learning. I'm getting a lot better at it, but yeah, there's a time and a place for social media, and you just can't get sucked in, especially working from home. Like there's a million other distractions. Like I have I have two babies upstairs, and I have to get orders off. I run everything with our business. Like I have to keep supplies in stock. I have to, make sure like customer service, every aspect of running a business. All of that on top of having children, it's just there's not a lot of like room for wasting time on the internet. And so still working through it, but it's been a good lesson to learn.
Yeah, it's a great lesson. And to your point, Chase, I think that social media really is a paradox where, on one hand, when you're using it the right way, it can be this tool for you to connect with thousands of new potential customers, followers, build the brand in an incredibly authentic way. And I've found this with myself too, where I'm scrolling and I'm mindlessly scrolling. And my first thought process is like, well, I have a business that's based on social media. So this is what I have to do. But then if I take it a deeper layer and I'm honest with myself, I'm like, well, you're not doing anything productive for your business. You're literally just like mindlessly scrolling through content. And I noticed such a difference in the quality of my day when I check my phone first thing in the morning mindlessly, or if I like make the decision to not go on it and start my day off with like a nice prayer or a meditation and get a workout in and kind of like do those things that are going to get my mind and my spirit flowing in the right direction, my entire day is completely different. But literally, if I mindlessly just take that 10 minutes to scroll on social media, I feel like my entire day is getting thrown in a different direction and not for the better.
Yeah. I get in a bad mood too. Like, well,
Me too.
my wife would tell you anyway. It's like it's just a frustrating thing to be on. Like you feel like you've killed time. Like you only want to be on there for 10 minutes or something. You stay on there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you're just like, that was like a huge waste of time. And yeah, waking up, like seeing the sun, doing some prayers, working out, it's like, yeah, it's like you're bettering yourself. So your time management is just much better and much more efficient.
Hmm.
Totally.
Were
Chase,
there,
oh, go ahead, Harry.
I was just going to ask Chase, were there any other experiences in your 20s that you want to open your kids' eyes to? Or 20s or 30s, but there's just, I feel like when you become a dad, I think something Brett and I are both looking forward to, but you have so many things you want your kids to experience and see. Anything for you that stands out?
Yeah, I'm obviously not gonna put my kids in public education. I think I don't judge people that do, but I think it's important to like I think it's important to be able to have like a direct communication, with the education you want your children to receive, whether that's like a nice private school or whether that's homeschool. I had a pretty radical 20s. Like I was like hitchhiking across the country, jumping trains, and then I lived up Ruby Ridge, built a cabin up there, and just really like dove into life, like really hardcore. And I I want them to be able to experience like that level of independence. At
Mm,
least my boys. Like I want them to be able to experience that level of independence, but also just have a better kind of frame of mind. Like we're religious, we're Orthodox Christians, and we think this is like a good kind of framework to live your life. And I'm happy to like give my children that. I think it's really important to like if you lead with that, everything else, the whole world is sort of put into perspective. I was just wandering, like trying to find the truth, trying to find something out there, and I think it's kind of dangerous to do that. It obviously made me who I am, so I don't regret it or anything. But yeah, I obviously want to be able to leave our children, land, business, maybe multiple businesses, and leave them the framework basically.
Mm. Did you find, Chase, that your travels and your hitchhiking experiences ultimately led you to Orthodox Christianity?
Yeah, yeah. I met. I was staying in this. I was still like a non-denominational Christian. I was actually raised Catholic, but I was kind of dabbling in Protestant traditions. But I stayed at this commune, Jesus People USA, in Chicago. Like 500 people live in this hotel, and I stayed there. I met a lot of young travelers, and I met this Orthodox guy that sort of taught me about the Jesus prayer, which is just it's a simple, repetitive prayer. Just Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And it kind of like it it creates like it's kind of like the gospel summed up, like these people crying out for Christ's mercy. You know, if we put ourselves in that perspective, like frame our mind like that way to where like everything is my responsibility, like I have to create the life I want to live. That prayer was really helpful to me, and it eventually, yeah, caused me to convert to Orthodox Christianity, and I've just found a lot of beauty in the services and kind of the ancient Christian way.
Hmm.
I was going to add, Brett and I, since starting the show, have gotten deeper in our faith and following Christ, and it's really been a backbone for us in terms of navigating difficult waters with business and life just in general. But I'm curious if you ever think about what it would be like to start a business without that firm foundation. I do all the time, and think, you know, there's so much of the fruits of our success is coming from our belief system. So I'm curious, do you think about that with what you're doing with the Woolshire?
Yeah, faith is integral to our business. Like we pray for our customers every night. We pray for our suppliers. And it's just like we have to like put everything in a perspective of gratitude. If I didn't have that, I don't know how I would do. Probably not well. I think I think there's obviously people that make money that do well without religion, without Christ. But I think if I didn't have that, it's hard to say. But I just can't imagine um, kind of my driving force. Like I really like put myself into what we do, and like I don't know, and not to sound like prideful or anything, I just don't think there's like a ton of businesses that like really like pray for their customers or like and that's like I have to like remind myself to keep doing that, but I think it's like really crucial to like what we are as a business.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually something that we should start doing for Noble as well. I really like that concept of praying for your customers. And it would make sense that having faith in a higher power would give you faith for something like an entrepreneurial pursuit too, because I think you mentioned maybe you never, even though you come from a family of entrepreneurs, you never dreamed that you would have your own business. You never dreamed that you would have your own wool mill and your own company and everything that you're doing now. I think there's like this beautiful naivete that comes from having faith that I think more founders need, where it's very easy to almost let perfection be a prison, where you think that, hey, I need to have 100,000 followers if I want to launch this business, or I need $1 million in capital, or I need to have this specific skill set. And I think one of the things that we've learned is that if you have faith in God and you have this like intangible ability to just roll up your sleeves and trust the fact that you can figure things out, over a long enough time horizon, God will, have the universe kind of like work in your favor and really good things will happen.
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
How do you balance, are you one of those entrepreneurs that do you like appreciate the wins in the moment, or are you someone that's always pushing for the next thing? Because I find that you're kind of wired one way or another, and certain people can blend that skill set together, but I'm curious like what your natural wiring is as a founder.
Yeah, I'm always looking for like the next thing. It's hard to be in the moment, and especially like now, like I'm like the main laborer for the Woolshire. We have some help as well, local help here, but I'm still the main laborer by like a long shot, like 90%. And I have so many things in my mind like constantly. It's hard to kind of appreciate the moment, but by the same token, like making a tangible product and like hand making them, like I'm forced to kind of be in the moment. I might just not appreciate it. But I literally am like hands on. I should take advantage of that and appreciate the moments. It's like we're gonna come to a point to where we're not in our basement anymore. Like we're building a big shop. We've got big plans, and it's special. Like this is a really special time. Like I can hear my kids laughing upstairs. I can hear my wife reading them books, and there's like that's not going to be forever, you know. So I do appreciate this time.
Hmm. Do you ever think about this? One of the things that I anchor my thinking to is the stories that Brett and I will be able to tell, 5 to 10 years from now, just where we were, what we were thinking about, what we were doing. In a lot of ways, the podcast is a great time capsule of the journey that we've been on. But do you ever kind of think about like I think it's a really powerful way to exist in the current moment is kind of like telling yourself, the story about what this moment will feel like 5 and 10 years from now, even further down the road. Is there anything that you kind of do, in terms of your thinking to get yourself into that mode of appreciation and really just like being more present with, what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I journal a lot, and I've written my son's now 2. I've written him and our daughter, who's 8 months, letters. I think like explaining, like especially for like big things like their birthdays, like their actual birth and then their actual like birthdays. Um, I've written them letters, and I'm kind of like weird. Like I bought them like when they were both born. I bought Frederick like a bottle of like nice single malt whiskey
Hmm.
for his 18th birthday, and then I bought Isla a nice bottle of wine. Um, but like I've written them letters, and I want to keep doing that like as often as I can. And just like telling them where we're at, like where they're at, and what we're feeling. I think the art of kind of letter writing is has gone away, but we can obviously bring it back so easily. Just it's literally just writing things down and like in a digital way to make it more tangible. And also I think there's just a powerful thing that comes from like pen and ink and like using your muscles to write things out.
Yeah, that's really well said. And those letters to your children and those gifts, they're like time capsules, right? Where they can literally go back to how you were feeling when they were born or how you were feeling on their first birthday, their second birthday, etc. And they're going to have memories pretty soon of dad building this thing out, and they're going to remember where you were when they were little kids, and then like to be able to see the quote unquote finished product of Woolshire 10, 15, 20 years down the future is going to be so cool for them, because it's almost like you're all building this company as a team and as a family. And I don't think you can put a price on that. And I love what you said about the handwritten letters. We had one of our friends on, our buddy Greg, on the podcast about a year ago, and he talked about this concept called etiquette alpha, where there's all this alpha to be gained by doing things that should be normalized that aren't normalized, and something like a handwritten letter, right? I could probably recount on one hand the amount of times that I've gotten handwritten letters over the last 5 years. So by you doing that, it immediately makes yourself stand out, where, there's pain associated with that versus like sending a text or typing an email that takes 5 minutes. That 5 minutes probably takes 25 minutes through a handwritten letter. And there's also this intangible aspect of like, there's like this antenna with your thoughts. Like I feel like there's this ability to process your thoughts from writing in a way that's not possible even through speaking. So I feel like you're checking all those boxes by writing some handwritten letters.
Yeah.
Especially to your kids. I definitely have an appreciation for it personally. Had my grandmother as someone who was a very important part of my life, but she would write me letters before I was born, through my childhood, while I was in college. And those are things I go back to and look at and marvel at her foresight of being able to think there would be some moment in time, whether it was the moment I received it or 5 years later, where I would go back to it and be able to pull on it for inspiration, or just being able to be close to her even after she passed. Like, I think that there's so much of that human storytelling element that we miss in today's world, through just like slowing down, having these like time capsules of letters being able to be passed around, and within your family too. I think it's such a rich tradition focused practice that, you know, your kids will be able to benefit from and learn so much about you as you are in these moments. I think it's really, really awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome about your grandmother. My great grandmother actually, she knit me all these wool blankets, and it's like, man, people don't do that anymore. Like, I don't know, my mom doesn't knit or anything, and I think it's just a lot of lost skill, and but
Def-
writing letters, like anybody could do it.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting how I think we're learning like the right things that we should be doing in the future. It's actually like a return to these old traditions, like especially with food and some of the things you're talking about, like letters and gifts, and even the way that our pillows are made and our linens are made. It's like, what if we actually had it figured out 200 years ago? And we almost tried to play the role of God and we screwed everything up, but we can get back on track by returning to these past traditions.
Yeah. And I think the internet has a way of like, I use this example a lot, but I grew up halfway in Arizona, in the city, and then my parents moved us up to rural North Idaho to this town of like 2,000 people, like a little logging town. And when I was there, when I like 15 years ago, it was just like loggers, like bunch of like redneck kids, and whatever. They had their own culture. And it's like now I go back and visit my parents and I see all the kids there, and they're all like the same as like LA kids. Like they all dress the same. Everybody's just acts the exact same, listens to the same music, and whatever. And it's kind of like the internet has created this like this whole world of where everything's the same. And I think people will find that very unfulfilling. Like, we have to return to tradition. We have to return to like our own cultural values. And if we don't, like, yeah, it's just a boring existence. Like, who wants to live like everybody else and be the exact same as everybody?
Yeah, totally. Chase, I feel like there's so much to your story that overlaps with kind of Brett and mine's values, and it's so cool to hear you tell it, and also, just from a customer standpoint and an admirer of the brand, being able to talk to you and learn more about what the Woolshire is all about, is amazing, and we're just stoked that our audience will be able to pull value from this. So just incredibly appreciative of your time. Where's the best place for people to find you? Where should we send people?
Yeah, you should go to Twitter, or X as some call it these days. Just our handle is just the Woolshire, thewoolshire.com, and that's where you'll find us. Yeah.
Love it.
Awesome. So glad we were able to make this happen. Another great example of taking the opportunity to turn these Twitter connections into real in-person friendships. And these are the people that you should be ordering from, doing business with, being friends with. And companies like you and people like you that are truly on a mission give us a lot of faith for the future of this thing. So we appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it.